Welcome to Pedagogy for Equity Feedback. We're all aware of the need to adapt our pedagogical approaches to meet the needs of the children and young people in our classrooms. During this session, we will explore how feedback can help to close the poverty-related attainment gap. This session is not intended to make you an expert in feedback, but instead help you to begin to consider how you might develop your own practice. Feedback studies tend to show positive impact on learning. It is important to ensure that the foundations are laid for effective feedback. This can be done by embedding formative assessment into your practice. In this session, we will look at approaches to feedback, but let's begin by asking, what is feedback? What does the Education Endowment Foundation say about feedback? First of all, providing feedback is well evidenced and has a high impact on learning outcomes. Effective feedback tends to focus on the task, subject, and self-regulation strategies. It provides specific information on how to improve. Secondly, feedback can be effective during, immediately after, and some time after learning. Feedback policies should not overspecify the frequency of feedback. Thirdly, feedback can come from a variety of sources. Studies have shown positive effects of feedback from teachers and peers. Feedback delivered by digital technology also has positive effects. Fourthly, different methods of feedback delivery can be effective, and feedback should not be limited exclusively to written marking. Studies of verbal feedback show slightly higher impacts overall. Written marking may play one part of an effective feedback strategy, but it is crucial to monitor the impacts of written feedback on staff workload. Finally, it is important to give feedback when things are correct, not just when they are incorrect. High-quality feedback may focus on a task, subject, and self-regulation strategies. Written feedback typically involves both grades and comments. It is typically given to learners after they have completed the task and is usually intended for them to read on their own. The impact of written feedback is typically a little lower than the overall impact. As you heard on the last slide, it is especially important that schools monitor the workload for teachers when using written feedback. Given it is not clear when feedback provided can be most effective, feedback policies should not overspecify the timing of feedback. Oral feedback typically involves spoken comments from the teacher, either to an individual, a group, or the whole class. It tends to be more immediate than written feedback and is usually given either during or at the end of a task or activity. The impact of oral feedback is higher on average than the impact of feedback overall. Whilst recognising the potential benefits of oral feedback, this finding should not supplant the necessity to consider the principles that underpin the EEF's teacher feedback to improve pupil learning guidance report, which can be accessed via the QR code in the corner of this slide. While oral feedback has a slightly higher positive effect on average, most schools will want to use a range of methods for providing feedback, and it is important to focus on quality within each medium. There is evidence to suggest that feedback involving metacognitive and self-regulatory approaches may have a greater impact on disadvantaged pupils and lower prior attainers than other pupils. Pupils require clear and actionable feedback to employ metacognitive strategies as they learn, as this information informs their understanding of their specific strengths and areas for improvement, thereby indicating which learning strategies have been effective for them in previously completed work. In order to implement feedback successfully, it will be important to communicate with learners and parents about practices and expectations that relate to your feedback approaches. Assess pupil understanding so that you know what needs to be improved. Consider the opportunity cost associated with different feedback practices. Ensure that feedback can be acted upon, for example, through including specific information on what a learner has done successfully or not, assisted with an explanation as to why. Carefully consider how feedback will be received, including impacts on self-confidence and motivation. Provide opportunities for learners to act upon the feedback after it has been given, evaluating how effective the feedback has been. Throughout this video, we have explored what feedback is and how to develop it into your practice. From this session, what has sparked your interest? What will you do with the learning you have gained? What are your next steps?